Hi everybody, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series, playing solo jazz piano. And today I actually want to talk to you about content that is in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 3. So one of the questions that jazz players and teachers often get is, how do I play out? And this is a question everybody I know hates getting. I think for two reasons. Okay, I'm using my soft voice. I didn't even do that consciously, but I don't think people like getting this question. I think one is this recognition that playing, the question implies that playing in is boring and that the student has mastered playing in, right? And that's not really a thing that you just master. Okay, so that's maybe one reason. But the second reason is that playing out is this huge, spectrum, this huge array of different possibilities, and the question kind of assumes that it's one thing and you can be told exactly how to do it. So I don't believe that it is, a monolith. It's not just one thing. And so what I want to do for you here is draw out a bit of a spectrum of playing out and some of the things that sound more in but go outside of the chord, and then some of the things that really sound, way outside of the harmony. So let's try this. Let's see how this goes. Probably required more preparation, but I drew this beautiful curve to show the spectrum. So, over here on the left-hand side, what I want to put is things that we really traditionally do when we play a standard, but that require us to go outside of the key. So one of those things would be blues, right? If I'm playing Have You Met Miss Jones, I might choose to use a blues scale. Right? And so that's not, we wouldn't think about that as playing out, but we are playing outside of the key, outside of the chord symbols. We could also put alter dominance somewhere over here on the spectrum, right? It's very common for us to use alterations and to use alternate scales for dominance, and some are more shocking than others. If I'm playing Have You Met Miss Jones, and I decide to use a whole tone scale for the C7, you might really perceive that as playing a bit out of the key, and it is playing outside of the key, right? So alter dominance would be on that spectrum. Another one which we wouldn't really consider playing out is using things like neighbor tones and enclosures. Depending on how long these last, we might really perceive them as just being, very par for the course. Or we might really hear them as playing out. Right, if we hold those neighbor tones or enclosures out, we might really hear them as playing out. And then we could also say something like ornamental, tonicizations, and side steps. Okay, so tonicization is a word that I use to indicate that we're adding in an extra 5 chord to reestablish a 1 chord. So instead of just hanging out on F sharp diminished, maybe I'm going to go to an extra D7. We could add in a G7. Right? And this is the kind of thing that pianists are just doing all the time. It doesn't really cross our ears. It doesn't really appeal to us as being out. And same thing with side steps, right? Side steps is like a neighbor tone, but for chords. So I could use the notes of an F sharp major to pull into an F major. Oops. So those are really kind of par for the course. We're probably not going to see them as playing out. Now, what might get interesting is if we use these same devices, but not so much ornamentally. And by ornamental, I mean that it's ornamenting. It's adding to the pre-existing chord rather than really becoming its own thing. So if we have these things stick around for longer, these can really sound like they're playing out. So if I'm playing Have You Met Miss Jones, then instead of starting right on F, I start on, I hold out a side step for longer, and then I bring it in. You might really perceive that as playing out. I'm coming back to the very beginning here. One thing that we do a lot to change the chord, but don't really perceive as out, is tritone substitutions. So instead of playing C7, maybe we play F sharp 7. And relatedly, we often do what we call a tritone 2-5, using the 2 of the tritone in order to tonicize the 1. So for instance, going into F major, we'd have this G flat 7, which is our tritone sub of the 5. And we put a D flat minor 7 in front of that in order to add some chords from outside of the key. Okay, and that's going to be a little bit more out. And related to that, we have a side step 2-5, where we do the regular 2-5, and before that we do it up a half step. So like A flat minor 7 to D flat 7, leading to G minor 7 to C7, leading to F. It is playing out, but it's a very traditional kind of a thing to do. Okay. So longer tonicizations, or particularly longer side steps, these we are probably going to perceive as really playing out. Another thing that's kind of in between, maybe out or not, is emphasizing upper structures. So, on a dominant chord, to really play some of the notes from, on a C7, I'm emphasizing the notes of A flat, C, and E flat, and A flat major triad. Those are all kind of normal notes of a C7 altered. But when you put them together, they start sounding a little bit out. One step further from there would be 3 out of 4 upper structures. And what I'm referring to here, I think I made a video about it, is using a 1-2-3-5 or a 1-3-4-5 upper structure, where 3 of the notes are part of the scale and 1 of them is not. So an example of that would be on C7, F sharp, B flat, and C sharp. That's a nice upper structure for C7. That's the sharp 11th, the 7th, and the flat 9. But if I add in the 4th of F sharp, then we get a B natural. That note is definitely not part of C7. That would be the major 7th. So now we're truly going outside of the scale. There's no debate that we're playing out as we add in that extra note. Okay. Okay. Now, another way to play out that we're going to use on this continuum, really on the right-hand side of this continuum, is modal interchange, right? And modal interchange means that we're going to stay on the same root of the chord, but we're going to choose a different mode. And now this might not be all the way over on the outside. So for example, we could play Lydian instead of Ionian. We could, play major with a sharp 4. And that might sound somewhat related. It might sound not, like more out. People often do this. Well, let's keep with Have You Met Miss Jones. So if I'm soloing over that, usually I would use an F major scale. But I could use F Lydian is, right? Or I could use Lydian sharp 5. And that really starts to change it, right? Maybe as I get to this G minor, it would be a kind of strange thing to do, but maybe I'm going to use Locrian instead of regular minor. That really changes the character. So that would be another way that we're, staying mostly in, but we're adding some element of playing out. I think that's where I'm going to end the list or the spectrum for today. So just to review one more time from, least out to more and more out, we have playing the blues and the tritone substitution and altered dominant. These are ways to change chords, but they're just really widely accepted. Then we have neighbor tones and enclosures, right? Playing notes a half step away from a chord tone, but resolving into the chord tone. And as long as these are done ornamentally, these are going to sound very in. If we start really stretching them out in some different ways, they might start sounding more and more out. Same thing with tonicizations and side steps. Oh, and I need to add one thing to the end. I'm sorry. we need to talk about planing. You thought the video was over and we were in review, but we're not. This is what good teaching is, I think. So tonicizations and side steps, right? Where we're kind of, these are like the equivalent of neighbor tones, essentially. If we do them really ornamentally, these are going to be more in. If we hold them out and substitute a chord for its tonicization or side step for longer, it's going to sound more out. Tritone 2/5s and side step 2/5s are pretty accepted, but they're definitely playing out. Upper structures are a big part of what we do in jazz. But if we really start emphasizing the upper structure with a lot of commitment, we can make it sound almost like we're playing outside of the chord. And if we choose 3 out of 4 notes, we choose an upper structure where only 3 out of the 4 notes fit with the chord, now we're really totally playing outside of the chord change. Modal interchange refers to taking a chord with the same root and changing the mode. So instead of playing F Ionian, playing F Lydian. Instead of playing G Dorian, playing G Locrian. Something like that. And this really takes you outside of the key center. And I should mention that modal interchange can interact in a really fun way with upper structures. So for instance, let's say on that very first F major chord of Have You Met Miss Jones, we decide to play Lydian. Now, that would be a pretty fun time to potentially play a G major chord. And this sounds really, to me, so bright against that F major. That is a little bit out. If we decide to play that F Lydian sharp 5, then we could choose to play an A major chord or a 1, 2, 3, 5 using A. And now we're kind of combining two things. We're doing modal interchange plus upper structures. And so we get kind of, we're teasing it further and further out. Last thing, planing is a way of taking an idea, could be a voicing, could be a short melodic motif, and moving it by a preset interval. So for instance, if I play, then I'm going to transpose it without necessarily having any affinity for the key center, any consideration of the key center. So maybe I'm going to transpose it by minor thirds. Right. Okay. This is completely taking us out. There's no question to me that this is out. And yet we're using something really logical. We could transpose it by major second. Okay? We're really not playing in F major anymore when we're using planing, but because the content, the thing that's being moved is the same, you do have a sense that there's intentionality behind it, even though you're totally going outside of the key. All right. Are you exhausted? I'm a little exhausted. If you like that, then and you want to go over it in much more detail, Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 3 is really the place to do it. There's a lot of detail in here. There's a lot of talk. There's probably stuff that I forgot. And so if you've watched this far, why don't you comment with the word cable, because Spectrum is my beloved cable provider. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon.